Hello, everyone. So, as usual, I just wanted to say hello and give us a few minutes before we get started on things. I think maybe one of the best things, hey, welcome in gaming. I think maybe one of the best things that we could do is, because we kind of ended in the middle of a feature last time, last Wednesday, I believe it was, we're going to review sort of where that left off, and then we will be, hang on, my volume is low. Let's figure out why that might be. Let me unmute myself on the stream here. Is it possible that your volume is down? Because it sounds fairly loud on my end when I unmute the stream. Hi, Tiff. Gaming was saying that my volume is low, so I'm curious. How does it sound to you? It sounded fine on my end when I just listened to the stream. So you have the stream on blast and your computer 3/4 of the way. How interesting. I wonder why it's so quiet. Tiff, is it quiet for you as well? Do you mind chiming in? I may be wrong, you do you. Well, I definitely want to make sure that everyone can hear me just fine. Um, I do have my volume up a bit. I'll make sure that the mic stays a little bit closer. Volume seems okay to you. Okay, well, if I need to be any louder, definitely let me know. My voice also just kind of naturally gets louder as I start going on and on. So I'm sure it'll pick up a bit as well. If it's too quiet though, game, and if you're not able to turn it up loud enough for it to be audible, maybe move mic just a smidge. Move it closer. I don't want it too close, because then you'll pick up all these different, like, just sounds coming out of my mouth. That's not just me talking. Let me see. I'm not sure if there's an easy way to amplify it either. So that might be something I just have to look back into, but I'll also just, talk a bit louder. Like I said, as I start getting into it, I definitely have a little more emphasis, I'm sure. It's just not quite being used to this whole streaming thing yet. But I'm going to go ahead and get started in terms of what we're going to be doing today. So to recap a little bit, last Wednesday we started on the feature to merge documents together. Just go with the flow. Gaming, you're easygoing. Good, glad to hear it. So this new feature, we actually have an open issue here in the issues list, and it is number 54 here, and it's the ability to merge documents. So there's not a lot of context here, but the idea, as we talked previously, is essentially in the Octo app, I should be able to, in the list view, kind of select 2 or more documents and merge them together. To start things off, we're just going to do, I think we said 2 documents, unless it ends up being really easy to do more than 2 documents. But we will just be adding that functionality or finishing out that functionality. So my brain was a little fuzzy last Wednesday. Like, I was very exhausted, and I'm a little exhausted today, but mentally I feel a lot better, so I think things are going to be just fine. And I think we're going to be able to fix sort of some of the mistakes that I made and actually come out with a feature that makes sense. I have given it a little bit of thought since then as well. I'm here to review streams. I love it. Thank you. And so let me actually pull up my chat in my other window because I have it enlarged and I don't have to keep like squinting or leaning in. Yeah, here we go. Got my hard ass hat on. Good. Good. So kind of we're going to kind of review it both from like a visual aspect as well as a code aspect. So to start things off, let's go ahead and get the dev server running. I've got the Octo app here. It says there's nothing to commit here because what I did was I took all of the changes that we started on last week and I just shoved them into a whip commit. So if you look here, you'll see there's a commit that says whip. For those of you that don't know the acronym, work in progress, and then ability to merge docs. And so if we show this, git show -p head, then you'll see these are the changes that I actually included. So we've got these sort of utility classes that we added for the styling. the functionality for actually showing the border or not if it's selected, keeping track of whether it's selected, and so on. And so I'll actually might as well, I guess, keep going with this. So what else did we do? We added a button that allows us to toggle whether or not we're in editing mode in the document list view. And again, we kind of added the state and functionality to keep track of those things in the document list view as well. So that's what we're working on. It's actually not a lot of code as we look at it here, but there is a little bit of refactoring I would like to do. Me too. Pika buff. More like Pika sleepy. I love it. Seems accurate too. And then, you know, from a visual perspective here, if we kick off our dev server, so npm run serve dev, let this kick off, and then we'll just go to localhost 8888, which is what we have here. So boom, we've got our list view. Right here, we've got a few documents we can edit. We can click the edit button. It says now we're in the editing state. Now that's going to go away. It's probably not going to say, or maybe it'll say something like that, but I'll probably change the styling a bit. And we can toggle that whether we're in edit mode or not. If we're not in edit mode and I click something, it should open the document. Of course, it's not. Oh, from Flannel to Lace. Hey, just stopping by. Sharp Flannel. I'll take that as a tribute. That is wonderful. I love it. That is so funny that you happen to stop in today, because I wouldn't say I'm a consistent flannel wearer. Just happened to wear one today, so that's pretty awesome. But yeah, thank you for stopping in. As you can see here, I am actually just demoing Octo and one of the new features. Dev offers himself as tribute, always, yeah. Just I'll be the sacrificial lamb here. So when we're not in edit mode and we click a document, it should open that document. But of course, where we were in the middle of this functionality on last Wednesday, it was kind of broken. If we are in edit mode and I click a document, it should get a border around it, which that appears to be broken too, actually, funny enough. So we'll be fixing that. We'll be fixing both functionalities, but that's what we expect. So going back over here, looking at the code that we have changed, I think most of what we need to sort of fix or modify is actually going to be in the document list component. So if we pop over to Atom, we've got this document list.view component here. In this component, the approach we were taking was kind of odd. I ended up adding like a basic function here that returns a function to be called with the document's ID. This is not as clean as I would like it, so we're actually going to change that a little bit. And then, actually, that one might not be too bad. It's really this one that I don't like, where the selected prop is actually evaluated from a function call. Because what happens here is, because we're not actually binding to an element that might be updated, it doesn't trigger this element in the view to actually be refreshed or re-rendered when it should. And I think that's actually the reason that when we click the document, it's not showing the border, because the documents list itself is not actually changing. So what we're going to do is, instead of looking up whether or not it's selected, we're going to wrap the documents list in a decorated list. And this decorated list is going to have two elements in it. It's going to have the document itself, but then it's also going to have the state of whether or not the document is selected. Hey Hannah, how's it going? So let's see. So right now we're iterating over filtered documents. What we're going to change here is we're going to come up with a new list, and this new list is going to be filtered documents plus the state that keeps track of whether or not an individual document is selected. And maybe instead of select document, we'll call it something like toggle document, just to be consistent with some of the other functionality that we've added. But before we worry about that, let's dive in. So what we need to do, this new list, since it's going to be based off of another piece of state, we're actually going to create this list as a computed function. So computed functions actually use proxy objects to keep track of the pieces of data that they need in order to evaluate. And if that data ever changes, the computed function automatically gets updated as well. So what are we going to call this list? Coinwell playing some Animal Crossing. That's awesome. Animal Crossing is wonderful, of course. So for this list, I think that for now I'm just going to call it final documents. Not a very creative name, but for now that'll at least give us something to work with. And final documents is going to, what is it going to do? It is going to return a mapped version of our filtered documents, which is our list that we're dealing with. So this dot, what is it? Filtered documents dot map, because we want to transform it and kind of inject some extra data. And in that map, what are we doing? We're mapping a doc to a hash here. So the parentheses shorthand here just pretty much says I want to inline evaluate and return whatever the expression evaluates to. Oh, hey, Butch, how's it going? Love the Pikachu emotes, of course. How's your day going? Did you stream today? And then this, so again, the parentheses are just used to kind of say that you want to evaluate an expression and then return the result of that evaluation. Whereas if we just did the curly brace syntax, we would have to like explicitly say, you know, return a new hash with some data. And instead of having that explicit return keyword, we're just going to add these little parentheses, which kind of implies that we want to return this hash. And it says, it's good, Tiff. I just stole all my favorite things from my island on Corey's Switch to have them on my island on my Switch. I love that. That is awesome. It's always great to have your own Switch and have your own island. I gotta say, that's like it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's both positive and negative to share an island, depending on how you look at it and depending on what you would like to do. But I really wish you had the choice. I wish you had the choice as to whether or not you could just have your own island when sharing a Switch. Bye, old island. Hello, new BB. Love it. Butch, I didn't stream today. Roughish weeks have taken a bit of time to myself. So excited to see you streaming. Thanks, man. Sorry about your week. Hopefully it gets better. It's Monday, so there's a lot of room for improvement for this week at least. Hope that gets better for sure. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you relaxed some, and, you know, it's always good to have some days off, just days to yourself. So each document object, we're going to be returning a new hash where we expand the document itself, and then we're going to add one piece of state, which is going to be selected. And then the value of selected is going to be the result of a simple array includes check. So we're going to say if this dot selected documents dot includes, whoops, this particular document, then it is selected, right? We have a list that keeps track of which documents are selected and which are not. And so that's going to be this Boolean value of selected. It's going to be either true or false. I think that should do it, unless I typo something or mess something up. That's always a good possibility, right? So I think if we just swap out our iteration here for filtered documents, and instead we say final documents, and then over here, we just need to say, instead of is selected, this call, we're just going to say document.selected. And the difference here, as I think I kind of touched on briefly, is that now when the property selected is updated, more specifically when the list of selected documents is updated, where did our computed function go? When this list of selected documents is updated, which happens anytime we click on a document, it is going to trigger this entire list of documents to refresh and re-render if one is affected. And that's the important piece here. And I think that's why it was broken, but we're going to find out here. Actually, funny enough, since I'm already calling vbind on document, again, vbind just takes all the properties of an object and passes them individually as props. I actually don't need this selected call here now that selected is just a property of that object. So this is redundant, thanks to our vbind. Now this is implicit because it binds all the properties of the object rather than you explicitly saying which properties you want to bind. But again, for this case, I think it kind of makes sense, and I think that's totally okay. So we're going to go with it. Let me catch up here. Pika says, Butch, I'm so happy you can be here. No, it's super late for you. I hope everything is okay. Yeah, agreed, 100%. Always feel free to reach out, man. I hope that, I hope that you had an awesome day, and I hope that every day this week just gets better and better. Happy to be here too. Not sleeping too good recently. I feel that one 100%. Last week especially, I think, was the issue, and that is kind of why I called my stream a little short last Wednesday. I was just not sleeping well at all. I mean, I was averaging probably like 6 hours or less a night, which, Butch, as you know, from your experience, is not good on the body. So, yeah, I've caught up on a little bit of sleep. I definitely need to get better. I need to get on a more consistent sleep schedule. That's the big thing because it's all over the place. But I'm feeling better today. Voracious Dev has a wonderful voice, so this is super relaxing. I appreciate that. I think that we can all agree it's very weird to hear your own voice. And so recently, when I've been kind of re-listening to some of these just to see, how the flow is and everything, it's been feeling very odd to hear myself talk. So I appreciate the encouragement there. So engaging. I never sleep well, so I feel it. Yeah. Sleep, just so important. Let's go ahead and test this out. So we made that change. Let me refresh this page. At the very least, it loads. I'm going to get the console open so we can catch any errors. If I click this document now, what do we get? We get nothing. So that is still broken. Nothing is actually happening when we select it. When we're in edit mode and we click this document, what do we get? We get nothing again. So clicking is actually not resulting in anything, which I find a little bit interesting. So let's look here. We've got this click action is bound to an anonymous function, so it just kind of creates one function for each iteration that we have here. And then we call select document, document.id. So if we go down to the select document function, it expects an ID, and it runs through this check of whether or not we're editing and what it should do based on whether we're editing or not. So I'm going to just go ahead and do a console log just to make sure this function is being called. Select document. As we see here, we're going to refresh the page, click the document, and sure enough, it's not being called. So that's kind of interesting. This is starting to make me wonder if this is another one of those instances where Vue.js kind of has some default behavior that is happening that I'm just not as familiar with, or at least not like as recently familiar with. So let me try one more thing, and if that doesn't work, I'm just going to pull up the docs because, we don't need to sit here and just trial and error this thing when we can look up the docs to see if it's a Vue issue that I'm not catching, or just a really simple typo or something. So console.log select document. Yeah, that should have done it, but it didn't. The click call, like I said, it's an anonymous function. We're passing in document.id, all of that seems good. So here's what I'm thinking, and I could be wrong here, I could be way off base, but I'm thinking that maybe the @click bind is actually struggling with the v4 directive, and I'm thinking that maybe Vue.js doesn't support @click on a v4 directive directly, and I might need to wrap the v4, I might need to like wrap it in a div or something and iterate on the div instead, but I'm not sure. So let's go ahead and dig in a little bit to see if maybe that's what the deal is. So I'm going to open up Vue.js, click on v4. I feel like that's not what I'm looking for. On click, method one event. To use both event and params, you need to have something like example event params. Yeah, that's not what I'm looking for exactly, so let's back out. Oh, click within v4. I might need to just change my search description a little bit because it doesn't seem exactly right. Yeah, that's down inside of a v4 directive, so I'm not seeing any issues reported there. So this is probably something that I'm just doing wrong. I mean, I would never put that past myself. Butch, I had this lecturer in uni who took animal cell biology, which was super tough class. a super tough class. I always loved it though because the lecturer was super intelligent about the topic, but more importantly, he was so passionate. I could listen to him talk for hours because it's so incredible to see. I have the same feeling with you, a voracious dev. I have no idea what is going on here, but I love it. Wow, I really appreciate that, man. And I am passionate about this. I really enjoy technology, software development specifically, web development even more specifically. And I think it's just amazing, you know. I think it's amazing the things that we can build and sort of like the creative outlet that it gives you. Hannah, what Butch Lyon said, I have no idea, but your excitement about it makes it very interesting. Glad to hear that. Why do you think I'm still here, Butch? I'm hoping this all just absorbs into my subconscious. I hope so too. From flannel to lace. I don't use any real names on here, by the way, unless you give me like permission. So that's why I'm using your username. Or I guess if I know someone, like I probably called some people by their real names on accident. But gaming, putting the kiddo to bed, but I'll be around once he's down. We all love it here. Glad to hear that. So one thing I talked previously about, which I will just, yeah, you can absolutely call me by my real name. It's in my about. My name is David, for those of you that don't know. Or you can just call me Dev. That's totally fine too. Yeah, Hannah, that's actually, it's funny. Like, but your name is in your username, so I felt like that was sufficient. Just like Tiff's. Her name is in her username, so. Wait, David. Oh, man. But, okay, Queen. But from flannel to lace, what I was going to mention is I actually do plan on doing an introduction to web development course through this stream at some point. My plan is to base it off of an existing sort of self-taught curriculum. The one I have in mind right now is called the Odin Project. But that's something I'm still just thinking about and planning out, and I'll be sure to give people a heads up before I start that. But the idea is that I would do either like a once weekly or maybe twice weekly stream that's focused on introduction to web development and following a specific curriculum that someone else could follow at the same time if they wanted. But all of the lessons and sort of examples in code, I would be happy to do on stream live and just answer questions, you know, kind of as I go. Technically, Butch is my name. Yeah. Well, exactly, right? Daddy. Literally the only name that matters. All right, I'm done. But, you know, so back to it, though. I'm not sure why the click isn't working, so we're going to figure that out real quick. Excuse me. I guess one thing we can test is whether or not even this call here is working. So we could say console.log test. Okay, click. No log there either. So this could be something to do with the anonymous function here that I'm spinning up. Like, it's very possible I'm just doing something wrong here. I wouldn't be surprised at all with the way that I've written this. So let's just look up the syntax for that again, just to make sure it's correct. Vue.js, click handler, anonymous function. Well, I don't see any shorthand here. Oh, but I do see function calls with params, which is interesting. So I guess we could try that. Yeah, let's see what happens. Let's go ahead and do it. It's maybe the anonymous function, maybe whatever's in here is by default wrapped in a function, and therefore it's just returning a function, but it's never evaluating. That would be interesting. Yes, it's closer to real learning with the interaction. Exactly. That's how I feel too. Like like standard education, like for me, just doesn't work very well. Like being self-taught as a developer, like I have to have my interests like constantly caught. I have to be like entertained to some level, and like standard schooling was definitely not the approach for me. So I get that 100%. The same goes for conferences or even online courses, right? You have the same problem. So 100% get that. Let's go ahead and just try this. We'll call the select document, passing a param in as we're doing, and see if we get that logging statement. because again, if Vue.js already wraps it in an anonymous function call, then it makes sense that the anonymous function that I'm putting inside of that would never be evaluated. Okay, so not looking too promising so far. I'm clicking, nothing's happening. In edit mode, I'm clicking, nothing is happening. Select document, that is the name of the function call here. How odd, right? Seems pretty odd to me anyway. So, I mean, the vbind, there's no errors that I'm seeing. We're passing in the document ID as the key. How strange. Let's try this. Let's try select document without passing any params, just passing in the function reference itself. Anything at all. Okay, this is really odd. Now I'm starting to feel a little concerned, like there's maybe a syntax error or something. No, it says it's still compiled and running. Let me just double check. I am in Octo, not Octo Plus. I am in Octo here, right? Yep, I'm in Octo. I mean, my changes aren't showing up for some reason, which is odd, but let's go ahead and start inspecting it with the Vue.js extension here. So we'll go ahead and grab this element. Oh, whoops, that is the incorrect one, my bad. I thought there was a selector somewhere in here, but that's okay, we'll just drill down. In the content, we've got the document list. In the document list, we've got the document, right? It does pass in selected, right? So that's what we would expect. Let me go ahead and do a Command-Shift-D here. I don't see any event handlers bound, but I'm also not used to looking for event handlers. No events fired when I click. I guess that'd probably be looking for the view, the store events, but we'll say click Vue.js bind click on v4. Which I feel like this is pretty much the same as what I searched earlier. Seeming really odd. If anyone has any ideas that's watching as well, I would be happy to hear them, because this is super weird in my opinion. I feel like I've attached click events to iterated components before, so I'm not sure why that would matter. I guess we could go ahead and try the Div Wrapper approach, which would completely separate the click from the v4. But again, that just seems really odd to me. It seems odd that we would have to do that at all. So let's try that out, unless someone... I wish I knew what was going on to help, but I believe in you. I appreciate it. Like I said, I am feeling better today. I do think we're going to get to the bottom of this, but it might take a moment. This is kind of weird behavior. So what we're going to do is we're going to create just a div, a basic wrapper around this. We're going to iterate the div. Whoops. There we go. We're going to iterate the div, and because we're iterating the div, it's going to generate it's going to separate out the responsibility of iteration and then binding of handlers. So we're going to say for each document and final documents, we create a new div, and then inside of that div, we're going to create this click handler here on select document. So let's see what happens here. Let me open the console, click. You know what? I bet you I know what's going on. I bet div, division, divider. I actually don't know exactly what div stands for, or if it's like an acronym or what. Like the P tag is short for paragraph, for example. Like the H1 tag is short for heading 1. But div, I feel like is short for divider, but I don't know off the top of my head. Div meaning HTML. Let's find out real quick. a division. Hey, look at you. Way to get it, gaming. It's a division or a section in an HTML document. I love it. The div is like one of the most common elements, though. It's a block level element, which means it does not collapse in line with other elements around it by default. And it has like pretty minimal styling applied. So division, love it. But I think I know what's going on. I think that at some point when we were working on this, we attached a click handler to this document component inside the component, and I want to say that there's a .stop inside of that, which would then stop the propagation of the click event from propagating up to our external click handler. Now that I'm like thinking through this again, I could be wrong. I don't see anything on the document itself, but let's look just to be sure. Looks like we turn this into a div class. Border transparent if not selected. Makes sense. Discardable action. Okay. I mean, from what I can tell, it doesn't look like that's happening, so that's unfortunate. I was really hoping that was going to be a simple win. Why is at click not working? Nothing, right? Nothing happening, no matter where I click. How about discard? Can I discard? Discard works, so the sub button works, but the top level click handler, which is on the actual document element itself, is not working. Super odd. Okay. Oh, this actually doesn't belong here either. Since I moved the iteration, the key can live on the iterated element itself. And the document click handler is just not firing. So let's clear some things out. Let's think. If I wrap that in a div and put the click on it, whoops. Here we go. So if I wrap this in a div, I'm just going to, again, try to sort of separate responsibility here. So I'm going to move the click handler itself onto the out of the document component definition. Hey, okay. Much better. So it's definitely something odd happening between the component itself being created in an iteration, or I'm assuming an iteration, like I don't actually know that for sure yet, and the click handler being bound. So that gives me something a little more specific to search for at least. So Vue.js bind click to component in v4. Excuse me, does not work on component. Oh, how interesting. If you want to listen at click.native, what is a native event or how is it different from other normal events? Why the special case for root elements? Emitted by that component. Oh, that actually makes a little bit of sense based on how Vue.js handles events being propagated out of components for you to be able to bind to. Okay, this actually does make a little bit of sense to me. I think that the only reason like this is happening is because of compatibility between Vue 1 and Vue 2. So this might actually not be a problem in Vue 3. I'll have to look at that later. But that totally actually makes sense. So all we should have to do then in order to fix this is if we go back to our original HTML here, we should just be able to say at click.native. And so instead of listening for the click event to be emitted from inside of the component, which would only happen if we bound a new click listener and then emitted the event directly out, or if we made it something like a what would it be, like an href or something that is already clickable, then this definition would work already. But if we do this, it should treat now the event like a native browser click and hopefully do what we expect. So let's see if that's the case. Click. Hey, it did it. Awesome. Perfect. So we called the select document function. It got logged there, which shows that we called it. That was an interesting one. I was feeling a little bit lost there for a second. But of course, it's a Vue sort of nuance that I'm just not super familiar with, at least, or not one that I've really run into too often, I'd say. So let's see. What are we going to do then now that we've got that working? That was such a weird little quirk to work past. But what we need to do now is we need to sort of change this back. We need to say select document, document.id, because we want to pass in the ID when we click on the document. Okay, so let's go back, refresh, boom. Okay, so now it actually opens the document, which is what we would expect, right? So that is the FA5 is the ID. This one is FFE as the ID. ED. Okay, cool. This is looking better now. That seems to be working. So now if we switch to edit mode and I click one, hey, it works. Awesome. And it toggles it. So if I click one and click again, I can select a few from the list and toggle them on or off, which is exactly what we expect to happen. But it turns out, and this is, I think, like the problem. We ran into this very specific issue of it not working last Wednesday, and I think my brain was just a little too fried to be able to debug that, or even just to form like a good Google search to be able to direct me in the right way. So I'm glad that we worked through that problem. I actually kind of forgot about that problem, or I would have probably looked into that a little bit prior to this stream, but hey, you know, live debugging is never a bad thing, I don't think. So we've got this working now. We have a couple of documents that are selected. Now if we look at our Vue extension here, we should actually be able to see in document list which elements, or sorry, which documents themselves are selected in the selected documents array. And we see here we have two items like we would expect. We have two things selected up there, and the first one has content of a new doc, a couple new lines, and then FFE5. That's correct. That's what we would expect. And then also, what else do we have? We should have like JFK DJK, JFK DJK, and we do. So this is working as expected. Actually, we already now can go into an edit mode. We can click a couple of documents, right? We can highlight a few documents or unhighlight them. Select or deselect is probably better terminology there. And then we end up with a list of a couple of documents that are going to be ready to be merged together. So, wow. Okay, now I just have to reorient my brain after all of that. I think that going forward should actually be quite a bit smoother now that we worked through that little hurdle. Sorry, should have faced my microwave before I started drinking water. Awesome. So I'm feeling way better about that now. That was starting to give me a little bit of anxiety, not being able to find out what was going on or even trigger events from firing. But I guess the browser not actually firing the event is a good reason for us not to see any action on that. So, cool. We select a couple of components from the list, and then we want to be able to merge them together, right? So the idea here is this edit documents. Oh, we should also deselect them once we clear this edit documents, I would say. Huge chug, yeah. Huge chug, exactly. Got to stay hydrated, right? Awesome. So when we click cancel, it should probably deselect anything that we'd already selected because we'd no longer be in edit mode. But if we did select something, we should see a button pop up that says merge documents, right? Like that's kind of like the action we're working with here. So that's what I'm thinking we'll do next is we'll fix those two little things. So clicking cancel will deselect whatever is selected, and then clicking, and then a button will show up if we select at least two items, and that button will say merge documents. We won't have the functionality yet, of course, but we will have that soon. So let's start with that. Let's go in. Again, in our state here, this is, or wrong No, this is the right one. Yeah, here we go. In our state here, we have a list of selected documents. These are the documents that we have toggled on, as you can see indicated by the white border on the other screen. And so, first things first, let's clear this list when someone toggles away, right? So we have a function, I believe it's called toggle is editing perfect. So what we're going to do is, it already toggles via this, and what we're going to say is if not this dot is editing, so after we've cleared it, we're going to say once it's clear, if we're not editing, then this dot selected documents equals an empty array. We just clear the array. Small writing. Oh, do you need me to enlarge it a little bit? I can do that. Let me know if that's a little bit better. If I need to, I can definitely enlarge it a bit more as well. I don't think anyone's going to complain about the text being too large, at least the way it looks right now. So, but I guess if that's a problem too, then absolutely speak up as well, and hopefully we can find a compromise. Excuse me. So if we're not editing anymore after we do the toggle, then we're going to say, you know, this dot selected document equals empty array. So boom, let's see if we fix that issue. So we edit, click a few documents here, click cancel, and boom, it deselects them. Edit, click a few documents, cancel, deselects them. So that functionality is working as expected. A little bit more. How's that? Hopefully that's a little bit better. But again, you know, if it's not, definitely keep saying something. I really don't mind at all. So that piece is done. Next, we just need to say, if we have more than one document selected, then we need to show the merge button. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to have another data property. Actually, this one is going to be a little different. Because it's based on the selected documents array, this is where computed really comes in handy, is computed, again, kind of watches other data properties and reevaluates itself when whatever it's watching changes. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another computed property in here that says is, I can either do can merge or is mergeable. I'll just say can merge for now. And this is just going to say return this dot selected documents dot length is greater than 1, right? So if we have at least 2 documents, which 2 is greater than 1, then we can merge them together. So, and then what we're going to do is, again, we've got this new property now, which we can use in the view here, and we're going to say, let's find out. Here's the buttons. So we're going to add another button here into this group, and this other button is just going to say if, actually it's going to be a little bit different. So instead of changing the text based on whether or not we can merge, it's just going to say merge documents, and it's only going to show up if we can merge, right? So let's try this out. So we click on edit documents, we don't see the button, which is what we expect. We click on 1, we still don't see the button. We click on 2, boom, we've got the button there, merge documents. So that's exactly what we want, exactly what we expect. You can see there's no spacing in between them. That is due to the styling here, and so I'm just going to add a simple margin left 2 here. That spaces them out a little bit, as you can see. If we click cancel, it does what we expect. If we have multiple selected, yep, we can still select more than 2. Click merge documents. Right now, it just calls that toggle edit mode. But we're going to change that. Instead of toggle is editing, we're going to say something like merge documents, right? That's what we want to do. Ooh, man, code is cool. It is cool. I love code. I absolutely love it. It's kind of amazing. Like, once you start getting like a real like base down, like it's just basic logic if you think about it. It's really nothing too complicated, but little basic pieces of logic, when you add them together, adds up to some pretty interesting things that you can make happen. So I absolutely love it, and I'm glad to hear that you're thinking or seeing that it's cool or finding it cool. So, the merge documents button, when we click on it, we're going to call merge documents, which isn't defined yet. That is going to be a method, of course. And let's put it in alphabetical order here. Actually, this isn't even in alphabetical order, I just realized, but that's okay. Merge documents. And what's it going to do? When that merge button popped up, it was like a straight up magic trick, right? Yeah, I love it. That's exactly how it feels too. It's amazing. It still doesn't get old even now. And it's realizing how much like fine level of control you can have is amazing too, because you can really make or break like a user experience. Now I could have that button like just as an example, right? Like if I click edit, I could totally just have that button there and just have it not do something, like if it can't do something, or have it error out or show a message. But that's not a good user experience. A user experience is when interactions with the application you're using only show up when they're relevant. And that's what I love about it, right? So like, why would I show that button if it's not usable? So absolutely love it. So when we call merge documents, what do we need to do? Well, we have a list of documents, selected documents to be specific. And what we need to do is we need to merge them into one. But now the question comes in, we talked about this a little bit last Wednesday. How do we go about this merging functionality? Do we want to just create one new document that houses all the information of the other three and then delete the other three? So far the way this app is built, and actually just to stay compatible with my production version of Octo, I'm not going to be able to just straight delete the documents from the list. They actually need to be somehow marked as merged or something like that, or I could just soft delete them. And in fact, I might just go the soft deletion route. Like, it seems kind of weird, but I don't know. It's a hard choice to make, and I feel like this is one of those things where I'd rather do as little destructive actions as possible until that becomes like a formal request from someone who's using this application. It feels like it's a little easier to reverse something like a soft delete than it is to reverse something such as like an actual purge of information. So we need to, I'm just going to say, we need to create a new document with the content of all the others, and then we need to soft delete the other documents. So what do we expect to happen here? So what I would expect to happen is, as a user at least, when I'm looking at this page and I select multiple documents, so boom, boom, boom. Oh, wait, what? I broke it somehow? That's interesting. For event click got undefined. Invalid handler for event click. Hang on, let me see what I did here. Whoops, forgot to click edit first. Invalid handler for click. Oh, is this the merge? Is this because of merge documents? No, can merge. Let's go look. Property or method merge documents is not defined on the instance, but referenced during render. Make sure this property is reactive, either in the data option or class-based components. Okay, I feel like this is like a basic syntax error now. So what did I do? I injected merge documents into the methods section, which is fine. How odd. I don't feel like I typoed anything, and it looks like this is a valid function as far as I'm concerned. Click if can merge, click equals merge documents. It might just be because I haven't implemented the function, I guess. That seems really weird though, but let me go ahead and just do something basic like a logging statement. I obviously love logging statements if you haven't noticed. So let's try that. So if I click edit, 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's just because I hadn't implemented it yet. It was just freaking out. So that's okay, because we're going to implement it. I just had some some comments here so we could talk about it before we actually do that piece of the work. So when we click merge documents, what do I expect to happen? So we kind of walked through what we expect to happen from the user's perspective, or actually we didn't finish that. So we click a few documents, we click merge documents, and what I expect to happen, I guess actually this is kind of like, could be up in the air. I could see multiple perspectives here, but I would either expect the documents to all be merged into one and injected back into this list, and we're still on this page. Or I might expect those documents to be merged together and then that document to be popped open for editing purposes. So I'm thinking, because we're already on the list view, what we're going to do is we'll merge them down into one document. That document will then be injected into this list. And then if the user wants to edit the document, they can just click on it, right? We will cancel edit mode. So it'll create a new document and they'll be back in the default list mode just like this. But the new document will appear here at the top of the page. And I think that makes sense. So let's do that. We have a list of selected documents already, right? Really, we just need the IDs. And creating the new document as well as like soft deleting the other documents is going to be straightforward. We actually have actions for all of those things already in our Vuex store. So what we need to do is we need to define one action here for merge documents, which we don't yet have. Dev, I am mesmerized by code. When do you think you'll be doing the bootcamp with chat? That is a great question. I just need to put forth some effort. You know, I mean, obviously, like I work as a developer during the day, and then I'm also doing this with Octo now. I just need to spend a little bit of time. I need to plan out a little bit of time where I can look at a curriculum and choose the right one, and then just kind of get myself accustomed with it. What I don't want to do is fumble my way through something. So what I will likely end up doing when I do this course is I will likely do the entire course myself off stream and then essentially do every lesson a second time on stream after I've already done it. Because I want to make sure that it's a very clean, smooth experience. And while like working through problems like this and debugging is really, it's not bad maybe, I just don't want to potentially confuse someone who's like really unfamiliar or really struggling like with concepts. So I'll say soon. I honestly am going to try to start it by the end of this month if I can. I'll be impatiently waiting. I always appreciate you. Well, I appreciate that, and I really appreciate anyone who's just interested at all. Like I love that. But I'm going to try my best to get that started before the end of the month. That's going to be my own personal goal. And while, you know, it's the beginning of November, so it seems like a long way away, time definitely has a way of slipping. But where were we? Right, so the merge call itself. What we need to do is we need to trigger, we need to emit the merge event for the Vuex store to pick up. We need to define the merge documents action itself. And that's practically it, honestly. I mean, we're about to have this working like pretty soon. Excuse me. Honestly, I would say we're probably going to have this working within the next 15 minutes. I don't think it's going to take very long at all. So let's see. Let's go ahead and define the action itself, just the action name. That's going to be here. And we're going to create a new action called merge documents. So merge documents. And this is just a way for us to kind of pass a message around and ensure that it is consistent across the different components that we're working in. So merge documents. Now we have a basic name. It's literally just a name that we can use to import and pass around. Then that action needs to be defined. If you remember from lesson 1 or 2, we worked more closely in the documents. I think that was lesson 2 where we did the duplication feature, or episode 2, I should say, not lesson 2. But we've got this documents module here. In the documents module, we need to import this just so we can use the name. And then we're going to define another action here, similar to what we did before. Last time we did duplicate document, so it's going to be really similar. We're just going to do a new action here called merge documents, right? So defined that we're going to access our context. We're defining that what we're going to receive is a list of docs, more specifically a list of document IDs. We may pass in the whole documents, we may not. Doesn't really matter all that much, honestly, because all we're going to be looking at is the IDs. And then, of course, we will be looking at the text actually as well, but we'll probably look them up just for a simple validation check. So we've got this merge documents call, and what we're going to do is we are going to, let's see, this is where those comments would come in handy actually, so I'm going to take those because really most of this stuff is going to be happening in this action here. Cool. And given this list of document IDs, so we've got docs, we've got the IDs, we need to find the document. So see how we have this find doc call? It's going to be similar to the duplicate in that aspect where we find each one. And then we find each document, we grab the text, we append the text together for all of them, and then what else? We have to soft delete them afterwards as well, and then we need to add that final document that we've just created. Okay. So that's doable. We've got this. Let me make sure. Yeah, I already have the doc model available. So actually, does add document that expects a doc object as well, doesn't it? So am I even using this anywhere in here? Why is this imported? Need to put case sensitivity on, make that a little easier. Interesting. It's actually not even being used, so it's funny that we have it imported here. It probably was being used at one point before I did some refactoring, but we do need it, so that's useful. And then what are we going to do? We're going to, from this list of document IDs, we're going to say const I guess we're going to reduce them. I guess I do need the whole list, so we'll say const original, naming is hard, original docs equals docs.map. Then what are we going to do? We're going to say docs.map doc find doc context.state and then doc.id. So we pass in the state and the ID, and it looks inside our state object to make sure that a document with the ID we passed in exists. And this is like a validation step. It pretty much says that we're not passing in arbitrary IDs that don't exist and therefore potentially causing errors down the road. So we map them and we should get a bunch of doc objects back. Or if they do cause errors, it's more important that the error makes a little more sense and can be traced back. So we've got original docs here, which is good. Then we need to create a new doc. So const new doc, I'll just call it, equals new doc. And what do we pass into this new document? We pass in original docs dot, I'm trying to think. I feel like we could reduce them down. So reduce takes like an iterable object, an enumerable object, and allows you to transform that object into something completely different. It's kind of like map, except it also allows you to condense like, say, an array of 3 objects down into one single hash, or in this instance, one string. And so I'm trying to remember, reduce allows you to pass in an initial object, no, an aggregator and the iterated item. So we end up with here, I'm going to make this a multi-line so that it's a little bit easier to follow what's going on. This is going to be original docs.reduce doc. So we're iterating over each one, but also aggregate. So I'm going to call this text. And then the initial item we start with is going to be an empty string. So we have an empty string. Actually, I think we can do one even better. Sorry, I'm thinking this through. What we could do is just concat this empty string now. So we could say text plus equal to doc.text. So we grab each individual document's text and we concatenate them all down into one string, like I mentioned. And then honestly, we'd probably want to do something like an extra new line at the end so that we don't have them literally like back to back. This would work. But now that I think about it, we honestly might even just be able to do a dot map and then a dot join, which could be even a little bit cleaner maybe. From a coding perspective, it's a little extra overhead. But let's just leave this as it is for right now. And then if we need to do some refactoring and clean it up in a little bit, we totally can. So this creates the new document. We have a list of selected documents. Done. We need to create a new document with the content of all the others. Done. So we created the document, but one thing we didn't have commented was adding that document now. Excuse me. So we're going to call context.commit add document. This is going to add this document to our new state store. It's a brand new document just with the same text as all of the others. And what are we going to pass in here? New doc, I believe, is what we need to pass in. Last step, we need to soft delete the other documents. So we're going to say original documents original docs. Yeah, original docs dot for each. So we're going to iterate over each one yet again. Doc, and we're going to call doc dot. We could call discard here directly, or we could use the discard document action. Does it really matter? It honestly doesn't, but I guess for this instance, because it is asynchronous, it might be better if we say instead just return context.dispatch, or rather I guess it'd be a map. So return original docs.map. So we're going to transform that original array into, let's see, doc. So we're going to transform that list of 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever documents into individual discard calls. So we're going to say in here, return context.dispatch discard document, and then doc. And that's it. And actually, we can even make this a little bit more of a shorthand and get rid of that explicit return and just have this. So original docs.map context.dispatch. So what this is saying is because each of these calls are asynchronous, we're going to return the promise for each of them. The promise concept is something that is used in JavaScript to represent asynchronous code that is going to run at some point, but is not like UI blocking or thread blocking. And that promise then, because we return a list of 3 promises, if we needed to wait for merged documents, we could totally wait for this whole action to finish, and then wherever it's called, do something specific, which we might actually end up doing. So I feel like it makes sense to go ahead and just return the asynchronous actions, and then they can either happen asynchronously, or where we're calling it, we can wait on them to evaluate if necessary. And I think this is going to be an okay pattern for now. So let's go ahead and test this out. I feel like I probably messed something up, but I would like to test it out and see where we're at now. So if it works, what we should expect to see happen is a new document should be inserted into our list that we were originally looking at, and then whatever documents we had selected should be pulled out of our list. So yeah, we would still be in edit mode, I believe. But yeah, let's find out. Let's see what happens. I guess we also need to now just dispatch merge documents. So that's one piece that we haven't done yet. So we're going to import that merge documents list in our document list view here. We're going to say import And we're really only importing merge documents, but I'll leave it as a multi-line in case we ever need to import anything else, which I wouldn't be surprised if we needed to. And then now we can just say down in our function that we created, this.store.dispatch merge documents. I'm going to try and get some sleep. I will leave a lurk for you. Have a wonderful rest of your stream. I really appreciate that, Butch. Thanks for hanging out. And definitely get some sleep. I mean, as you already mentioned earlier, right? Like, and as we already talked about, sleep is super important. So rest well. Okay, give me 1 second here. All right. And so when we dispatch merge documents, we are going to pass in our array of selected documents, right? So this dot selected documents is all we need to pass in. And then I think we're good. So one thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to also, exit edit mode. And then we're also going to need to clear selected docs, which we could probably do in the same call here of exiting edit mode. So let's go ahead and see what happens here. We might have an error, might have a few things we need to work out. So let's try this out. Edit document, select 2 documents, click merge documents, and oh, interesting. So it looks like some of those actions actually worked as expected. It looks like some did not. So what worked as expected? We called discard document on, I don't know what disable listeners is. Interesting. But we called discard document twice and add document once. But the only difference here is, the only issue is that it actually did not return the text. When we created that new document, it did not create it with the text that we expected, which would be the text for these 2 documents. So part of our functionality worked, but part of it did not. Which again, I'm not that surprised by. We wrote a lot of code without testing it. So let's go into the documents module again. Let's go down to merge documents and figure out where this kind of went wrong. So we call, there's a lot of things happening here. So we call new doc, and when we call new, I think I might already know what's going on. I think the problem is that the constructor for doc, the doc model itself, is not actually expecting you to pass in a string. It's expecting you to pass in an entire object. And text is just one of those properties that you can pass in. Otherwise, it defaults to just nothing here. So that is probably our problem here, just by a quick glance. So we're going to refactor this a little more. It's actually going to make it a little easier to read, too, which is going to be nice. And hang on, this, yeah, these 2 lines need to be tabbed in. Perfect. So boom, so text is going to be the result of this reduce function call that we have here. Yeah, let's go ahead and test that out now. So I'm going to discard that one just to get it out of, interesting. I don't think discard previously opened a document. I'll have to think about that one. But I don't think discard previously opened a document. I think it just removed it from the list. So I might have just introduced a regression there. We can definitely take a look again, though. So clicking on edit documents, let's go ahead and select 1, 2, 3, click merge, and look at that. We got a document with all 3 of those merged together, and then those 3 original documents were shoved out of this list, and they should be in our discarded list, actually. So we should see the first one says a new doc with a UUID. The second one has these JFKDs, and then the third one is actually the same document, funny enough. So is that what we have? Yep. Look at that. And of course, they were discarded in reverse or in order of most recently updated, which means that they're actually going to be updated in reverse order, and so you end up with a list that's the opposite of what they were in, but that actually makes sense. So because when you discard a document, it does touch that updated at timestamp, and so it discarded this one first, then it discarded this one, and then it finally discarded this one. And this list is, again, reverse chronological order. So that's awesome. It actually worked as expected. So our functionality is working. Again, I do think that we actually introduced a regression here with the discard button. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that could be solved. Let's see if we look at our actual document component. Discardable action. So it actually doesn't make the bind here, but I think if we call essentially a stop propagation inside of this button, which I believe is what we want, it would prevent any other browser actions from happening. So let's look at discardable action, and you see there's an @click.prevent, so it prevents the default browser behavior, which is odd. But it's not a .stop. I don't know why I'd be calling .prevent, because there's no default browser behavior on a div element. So maybe that was supposed to be a .stop. Let's go ahead and test it out and see what happens. So click discard, discard. Looks like it's working as expected now. If I change that back to a .prevent, what happens? It opens it up. Okay, yeah, so .stop is what we want. I don't know why it was a .prevent. That doesn't actually make a lot of sense to me, but that's okay. It doesn't need to, because we figured it out. So I think we have it there. We definitely still have some time left, so I'd like to do some refactoring, get the PR up for this, potentially get it merged in, if I feel confident enough with it. But it is working as expected. So now if I want to just take that newly merged document, boom, and merge it with a couple others, there we go. We have one document now with all of those others. I do think there's one more thing that I'd like to change. You might notice that when it merges these together, it just gives them one sort of new line between them, but I kind of want to add spaces so that like the text from this document and the text from this document don't end up just sort of like together like that. Maybe join them with an extra line between, if that makes sense. I'm honestly not, I'm on the fence about whether that makes sense. So I'll do it and then potentially change the functionality down the road. That'd be a very simple change, because all it really requires is for us in our in our documents module to go in and just add, is it one new line, is it two new lines, or is it who knows however many more. Not a big deal. I also think that the way this reduce is set up is it's pretty solid, actually. I think I'm going to turn it into a one-liner, though. So I think if I just wrap this in parentheses instead. Uh-oh. There we go. There we go. So now it's a one-liner. So our reduce call accepts a function, which is what we have here. And in this function, each document is passed in as a parameter on the right, and then text is the aggregated sum. So whatever is returned overwrites text. So we start with an empty string, first iteration, text, we add, actually I don't even need to do plus equal there, I could just say plus. So we add text to the document text plus two new lines. So text, which is the aggregate, plus document text plus. Actually, I have that backwards. I should probably add the new lines between the existing text and the document text. No, never mind. No, I think I had it right to begin with, because, and I'm just going to do the, did I say I was going to do one or two? I think I said I was going to do one. Now that I'm thinking about this, I actually found one little problem. So the issue with this approach now is, for every document, say we have two documents, we're going to start with an empty string, we're going to add the first document's text, and then we're going to add two new lines, which does make sense. Then we're going to add the second document's text. Now what doesn't make sense is I am arbitrarily adding two extra new lines to the very end of the document, which I don't like. So before I talked about how we could actually change this approach a little bit and use a .map and a .join, and now I actually think that makes more sense, because .join allows you to inject a string between any arbitrary number of strings. And so what that's going to allow me to do is, say I have two documents, I'm only going to insert two new lines between those two document texts. If I have three documents, I'm only going to insert two new lines between those three documents text, but there's not going to be that extra trailing new lines, which injecting a bunch of trailing white space doesn't make sense to me, so I just don't want to do that if it's unnecessary. So that said, we're going to change this a little bit. Instead of .reduce, we're going to call .map. We don't need that text object. We just have a doc. We're going to map doc to doc.text, the property. And then after we map doc to doc.text, so now we have an array of strings, we're going to call .join with, what was it, 2 new lines? Is that what I said? Boom, 2 new lines. So, and that's it. It actually does look quite a bit cleaner with that. It's just the difference is you end up with multiple iterations rather than just like a single iteration, which for performance reasons can be a bad thing, but we're not dealing with anything crazy here. I mean, even if someone wanted to merge together 100 documents, like that wouldn't be an issue at all. So let's go ahead and make sure that still works as we expect. But what we should see now is between this 83A9 and testing this again, we should see 2 new lines injected. So let's do this and merge them together. And yep, we sure do. Now we have 2 new lines injected between them, which I think is what we want. Let me just, let me cancel that. Oh, there must have already been a trailing white space. I was wondering, I'm like, why is there actually 2 full spaces? Because 2 new lines really just means 1, 2. It just means 1 empty line. So there must have already been an empty line in there, which is, again, totally sufficient. So, yeah, that looks good, I think. This seems to be working. I really like that. I think I saw one thing that wasn't working as expected, which is when I click edit and I do merge a couple of documents, it should automatically take me out of edit mode. Boom, which it does not. See, so I can keep editing, which I think, actually, you know what? I kind of like that it keeps you in edit mode because maybe you're merging a few sets of documents, doing a bunch of cleanup. Eventually, I might turn that into a settings thing. So maybe it'll be an editor settings thing where you can say, like, either leave me in edit mode or don't. But for now, I think it's actually going to be just fine. I don't think it's bad to have someone just have to click cancel after merging a couple of documents together. So let's refresh this page. Yeah, I think this is looking pretty good. So one thing I would like to change is this text here that says we are in the editing state. Like it is correct, but I'm just not sure. I guess I'm not really sure it's necessary. So it would be nice to say that you can like click on documents to select them though. So let's go ahead and just leave it, but we're going to change the text a little bit. Exit edit mode, clear selected docs. That's right. We already had this comment here. So what are we going to do? We are going to, let's see, clearing selected documents, changing edit. Actually, that should just be as simple as saying toggle is editing, but we decided to leave that on. So let's just clear selected documents and then leave it in edit mode. So this dot selected documents equals empty array. That looks good. So yeah, I don't think we really need to modify anything else. I'm just trying to look to see if there's anything else I need to clean up after from some of the changes we made before. I think we're solid though. Cool. We can look at the final diff obviously and then we'll know for sure. Edit, cancel, edit, cancel. Okay. Everything's working as expected. It looks like UI is working. I can click discard. I can go into discarded and click restore. Look at recent. We've got this restored document now. Yeah, I feel pretty good. Let's go ahead. Hang on. Yeah, let's go ahead and see where we're at in terms of the actual, whoa, loud sounds. All right, so we've got all of these changes now where we change the prevent to a stop, which makes sense. We have this new button, merge documents. We changed the iteration to use this final documents list instead of filtered, which again is just kind of like a decorator. I guess we could call it decorated documents. I'm not sure how to feel about that though. Excuse me. Click.native, that looks good. Got the new merge documents action. That all looks pretty solid to me. Yeah, okay, let's, I think that looks good. I'm going to go ahead, I think I have the whip commit already, so I'm going to go ahead and add all of this and amend it into that commit. Amend is an alias I have. It's the same as saying git commit --amend -c head, which says I want to take the changes I currently have, shove them into the previous commit I already had, and then use the same commit message that that commit had. What else? So it's amended. Looks good. Oh, we do want to, let's go ahead and check out the master branch. Make sure we have all of our changes pulled down. I do think I merged something in. Yeah, I merged a PR that somebody opened. So I'm going to go ahead and check out my branch again, rebase those master changes in, and then do a rebase interactive so that I can reword this commit. And we are just going to, whoops, I'm going to say add ability to merge 2 or more documents in the document, what should I say, in the documents list view. Add ability to merge 2 or more documents in the documents list view. Cool. We don't have a way to undo the merge per se, but since we are just taking the existing documents and soft deleting them, someone could just soft delete the new document and then go and restore the other old documents. So I think that's sufficient for now. There is kind of like a workaround. Maybe eventually we'll want to add a smarter sort of like restore functionality, but I think this will work. Actually, I do realize there's one more thing I forgot to change, which is what I went in there for, which was that text. So we are in the editing state. So instead of saying we're in the editing state, I'm wondering if we can do something similar to this here. Maybe I'll just use text muted to just make it kind of drop into the background a little bit. So on this paragraph that says we're in the editing state, I'm going to add a class. This class is going to be text muted, and it's going to say select 1 or more documents to merge them together. Actually, I need to say 2 or more. Whoops. Select 2 or more documents to merge them together. And like right now it's very specific. It just says to merge them together, but eventually we might actually support something like a discard all or a, you know, restore all or just something like that. I don't know, like some sort of bulk edit feature that has more, that supports functionality other than just merging. But for now, since merging is all we have, I feel like it's okay to tailor the message specifically to merging. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Boom. So edit documents, select 2 or more documents to merge them together. Boom, boom, and then merge documents. So it's still not necessarily like the cleanest UI because, you know, especially on mobile, you're going to have to scroll back up in order to see, even on desktop. If I hide this, you're going to have to scroll back up to the top to click the merge button. Eventually, we might want those buttons to be fixed on the screen even when you're scrolling, but for now, I think it's okay. I think that same thing could be said for the filter as well. So let's see what that looks like on mobile actually while we're at it. Edit documents, select a couple, merge. All right. I think we're good to go. This looks pretty solid. I can just amend that commit I just made again. Whoops. Yep, added the text muted, changed the text itself. Cool. And now we can push that branch up to GitHub. Excuse me. Cool. So let's pop over to GitHub. We should see now, well, not here, but on the pull request tab, we've got the ability to create a new pull request. So add ability to merge 2 or more documents in the documents list view. What does this do? It closes number 54. 3. Oops. Summary. So this PR adds an edit mode to the documents list view. Users can toggle edit mode and select 1 or more documents. When a user selects at least 2 documents, the merge documents button appears and allows them to, actually hang on, we'll say the merge document button appears. When a user clicks the merge documents button, all selected documents, or sorry, I'll say the text from all selected documents, excuse me, the text from all selected documents is joined by 2 new lines. Is joined by 2, or I'll say the text from all selected documents is used to create a new document, and the existing documents are soft deleted. Okay, so it adds an edit mode to the documents list view. Users can toggle edit mode and select 1 or more documents. When a user selects at least 2 documents, the merge documents button appears. When the user clicks the merge documents button, the text from all selected documents is used to create a new document, and the existing documents are soft deleted. Okay, I think that's a sufficient description for this PR. I mean, it's really for myself, but it's also sort of like serves historical purpose, so I can come back and kind of get an idea of what the heck I'm thinking when I'm doing these things. But it seems good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and click create. It's already linked to an issue. I don't think I need to set a milestone on it because the issue is linked to a milestone. But let's go ahead and review this code real quick and see if we feel confident merging it in. So we add the utility classes, which I think totally makes sense. We change the propagation handler. Wow, excuse me. Instead of the document object itself being a routed link, we treat it as a basic component now, so it's just a visual component, and the functionality of whether it's clickable or not is managed by the document list view. That seems sufficient to me. No longer need document route. We have a new form group which houses these 2 buttons. Makes sense. We also have a new paragraph that shows up. Makes sense. That HTML could probably be slightly different, but that's okay for now. Final documents. Naming is okay. So click.native, select document, document.id. The key is the document ID. We bind the entire document, which also passes in whether it's selected or not. So that seems good to me. Merge documents is editing selected. I'm just trying to review this to make sure that everything in here is actually used. We haven't left over some like console.log statements or something like hideous like that. And that things look fairly clean, and that it wouldn't require much, really, that it doesn't seem like it requires any refactoring right now. I don't care that much about things needing refactoring down the road, especially since we don't have like a linter or something installed. But I do like to write the code as cleanly as I can, at least the most like human readable as possible, for the most part. So, boom, we decorate the documents here. Oh, see, here we go. This function we don't actually use anymore because we got rid of it. That is selected now. It's just a part of the document object. So, yeah, let's get rid of that. Is selected is unnecessary. Boom. Okay. What else? Merge documents is used. Toggle is editing is used. Select document is used. Select document, passing the ID. Yep, looks good. Actually, man, I'm kind of tempted to use the is selected in multiple places, but for now we'll just leave it out. Much of this is going to be broken down a bit. We're starting to add on quite a bit of functionality, so I think we're going to want to start breaking down these components and maybe using some higher level components at some point to wrap around these more basic components. Like the document list itself is starting to have custom functionality, so that could be broken apart. But overall, this looks good. I feel pretty comfortable with like all of these files at the moment. I feel comfortable with the code and its current status. I'm going to merge this in, but it doesn't actually. Oh yeah, you can't prove your own. That makes sense. I am going to merge this in, but I do quite a bit more testing before I actually cut a new release. So you might notice, like on the if we whoops, not the issues page. If we pop back to the main page, you'll see here that our latest tag is at version 0.9.0. And we actually have some changes that have come out since then. I just haven't actually released them in a new tag yet because I haven't had the chance to review them. Once I review these changes and I actually test it all together in this app, then I usually will release a new version. If there's a lot of new functionality, I'll bump the major version. If it's mostly just like styling changes or bug fixes or something super simple, I'll just bump the patch. And we are not at V1, so it will not forever, but it will for a while still probably be at alpha. I'm calling it alpha at the moment because it is very early stage, and I do a lot of sort of lightning changes. Not huge refactors, but there's definitely some on the horizon. So I call it alpha. Eventually we'll get to beta. I think once we do the migration to Vue 3 and Tailwind, all using Nuxt.js, that's when I think we're going to be pretty close to being able to just call this beta. And at beta, we're going to try to keep the application very stable. Really, it's about developing a stable API. And that's what the life cycle of beta is going to be like. Once we actually have a decent API that's stable, developed, and kind of an extension or plugin system built out, then I think we'll be approaching on what I'll call version 1. At a high level, that's just kind of what I'm thinking right now, but that's obviously all subject to change as well. So let's pop back over. Let's get this pull request merged. Looks good. Merge it, confirm merge. Delete the branch. And we're good to go. It's in master. So I'm not going to deploy a release out because even try.octo.app, which is where this open source version gets built to, I'd like to keep stable and up to date with whatever tags we have released. So we're at about 10:45, getting pretty close to the 2-hour mark, which is typically where I cut it off. So honestly, I think that I'm probably just going to call it for the day. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts or anything that I kind of touched on that you'd like to hear any explanation on? Thoughts about Octo, thoughts about the streaming, anything at all? I do want to open up, for that point in time. I guess we're only at about the 1.5-hour mark, so even a bit earlier than I thought. But it's been good, and we actually made a lot of progress. We finished that existing functionality that we started on last Wednesday. I feel like where we ended up is in a much better state than we would have if I would have not called the stream early last week. My brain was really just not feeling great. But things were good today. A couple of small hurdles, but we worked through them and definitely got it all working. Let me double check. Do I know when I'll be streaming next? Yes, great question. So I will likely be streaming on Wednesday. I am not gonna say that I'm 100% positive on that. Again, with like the sleep issues and everything else, and also work, I could potentially change my mind. But my tentative plan is to stream on Wednesday, and I will likely be again like working on Octo. That's what I'll be spending a lot of my time on, I think. But that also kind of gives you like the introduction into Vue.js, Vuex, some other technologies that are a lot of fun to work in. Beyond that, I've also done a little bit of pairing up with Guy Royce. He's at Guy Royce here on Twitch. Awesome developer in the local area that I'm from. And we started working on an 8-bit game using the WebAssembly text format. So I'm really excited to pick that back up. And glad you asked, depending on his availability and depending on how I'm feeling, I may try to see about doing that on Wednesday or Thursday instead of my like tentative Octo stream, because we did have to reschedule from this last Saturday, and I haven't had a chance yet to catch up with him and see if he would like to do that this week or if he'd like to just put it back off until this upcoming Saturday, which would also be fine by me. So if you're not connected with me on Twitter, that's where I post updates. That's where I talk about development, talk about random things. That's where I post links to live streams for Twitch, where I post links to the VODs, post links to the YouTube uploads when I do them. And it's really the best way to like stay up to date with like what I'm working on and any of these live stream videos. So definitely connect with me on Twitter if you're not. You can also connect with me on GitHub. Octo, again, open source. It's on github.com/voraciousdev/octo. The link to both my Twitter and GitHub are in my About section of my Twitch. So, yeah, please feel free to connect. I would absolutely appreciate that. It would be awesome to have any of you here hanging out again. Beyond that, I guess just, have a good rest of your evening, a good rest of your week, and I will talk to you all later. See ya.